Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. It is the Friday, March 6, 2026 episode of the Marco Dre Show. Thank you for tuning in to hear today's groundbreaking news right here in America and across the board, where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Let's begin the best hour of radio, informative, uncensored, unapologetic, and ready to go. It's Friday, so you know what that means. It's time for our weekly economic reports, all things that has to do with the economy. So let's jump right into one of our first big topics today, and we've got to talk about what's taking place in the bond market right now. Big changes are occurring largely because of this war that we seem to find ourselves in between Israel and Iran right now, with no end in sight, might I add. This article's out of Bloomberg. It says that treasuries are now headed for their biggest weekly loss since April of 2025, as surging oil prices fuel inflation concerns, overshadowing a surprisingly weak U.S. jobs report that might have otherwise bolstered the case for the Federal Reserve interest rate cuts. I think we can probably forget about all that now. But what are we seeing right now? We're seeing that the $31 trillion market extended its losses on Friday, pushing yields on a 10-year notes up by 3 basis points and extending the rise this week to 22 basis points, the biggest such increase since President Donald Trump announced his Liberation Day sweeping tariffs last year on all trading partners with the United States. Now, traders were pricing in at least one reduction rate this year for the Fed, possibly as soon as September. We'll still have to see if that will happen, if the economy can recover since then. But what are we seeing right now? We're seeing yields on these 10 to 30-year treasuries. They're reaching intraday highs now on Friday. And a lot of it has to do with the Brent crude futures that we're looking at today, $90 plus per barrel. We'll talk about that momentarily when we go over our stock market report. But this is happening for the first time in 2 years that oil has been this high. We're also looking at 2-year yields, which are, again, very sensitive to changes in the Fed's policy rates and what have you. They're jumping 23 basis points this week to an all-time 3.6% high. Now, what does all this mean to the average American? What does all this mean? Of course, these moves come in to set the tone as investors are now focusing on energy costs, so we're seeing a little bit of shift as far as investment goes. And, of course, the potential repercussions that it could have on global inflation and, of course, central bank policy. So what we're seeing as a result of this, we're seeing the bond market is really selling off because, again, investors are reassessing the inflation and the risk coming out of the Fed. And anytime traders are now beginning to dump these treasuries, you're going to see these yields rise. That's why we're seeing a 22-point basis jump in this year's 10-year yields. That's why we're seeing these things. I mean, this is really unbelievable. But again, it's not unexpected because of the climate of what's taking place globally. Again, when you shut off all oil coming out of a region where it's 20 to 25% of the entire global trade of oil, you're going to see a lot of repercussions all around the world. And then you're seeing other markets in Europe and Asia respond as a result of that as well. So it's not shocking to see these things. But when you're expecting a Fed cut this year, hopefully, right, to ease up on these interest rates, the intent for that, of course, is to expand the government. Obviously, it's cheaper to get loans and what have you, cheaper to buy and whatnot, buying homes. People are looking forward to these things. Well, if that goes away, or if they, for instance, if they rise, you're not going to see that expansion of the economy. So people are kind of getting their affairs in order right now. They're looking to put their investments in other places. Right now, oil looks like a very good investment right now, especially if it goes up to $120, $30, $150, $200 a barrel, which it could. I mean, we've never seen a crisis like this where we have, as I said to you before, about a fourth of the global oil trade no longer in supply. Again, it's all simple supply and demand with this. And that's why we're seeing a lot of people jump in the bond market right now. They're selling off quickly because they want to get ahead of all this. So, not shocking to see this, especially the way things go. And I always tell you, look at the bond market. Look how the bond market is responding to the economy. Is it selling off quickly? That means there are fears of recession coming. So we've got to be very cognizant of all these things right now, as one can imagine. Let's look at the Labor Department's job report this week. Nothing positive coming out of this. It seems that employers have now shed some 92,000 jobs in February. That figure was well below the expectations that economists had, who estimated the economy would add 59,000 jobs. Now, this all comes at a time when the unemployment rate was at 4.3%. Now it is 4.4%. So now we're slowly inching our way back up in unemployment numbers. And by the way, these revisions were made to the payroll numbers for the prior 2 months, with December's reports revised down by 65,000 jobs from a gain of 48,000 to a loss of 17,000. So we're seeing these numbers constantly fluctuate. We saw this with the Biden regime too. It's nothing brand new. But we're getting this information and people are saying, oh, well, we're getting more jobs. This is positive. That means the economy is growing. But then we look at these revisions and we say, okay, this is not really happening right now. Then, as one can imagine, investors will respond to those. We also look at jobs reports coming out of January, revised down by 4,000 from a gain of 130,000 to 126,000. So we're seeing a little bit of a dip as far as the expansion of job growth in America in a time where we would like them to begin to increase. Where are we seeing these cuts and losses the most, though, in February of 2026? Lots of it's coming out of the private payrolls, which shed 86,000 jobs in February, when economists expected a gain of 65,000 jobs for the month. January's gain of 172,000 jobs was also revised down to 146,000. Now we're also seeing government payrolls contracted by 6,000 jobs in February. Let's see, manufacturing. This is the one that I want to see grow. And I've been telling you this for a while. A strong middle class is really set on manufacturing in a country. When you produce your own goods and services, this is what we need to start seeing expand greatly. What are we seeing instead? Well, we're seeing the manufacturing sector had lost 12,000 jobs in the month of February, well below the expectations, who predicted a gain of 3,000 jobs. Not going in the right direction. And especially with all these alleged investments from abroad, the $18 to $22 trillion, folks, where is that investment right now? We've been touting, Trump said this at the State of the Union last week. He said we've got this record number of investments coming in the country. We've never seen anything like it. So much more than Joe Biden's $1 trillion in 4 years. We got this in 1 year. Where are the jobs, though? Where can we see this investment really start to grow our economy? What's being developed right now? How many jobs can we predict as a result of this $18 to $22 trillion investment? Over how many years or months should we expect this inflow of money to come in the country from abroad? What can we expect from this? And we're not getting any of these answers because no one's invested a dime, at least in anything I can find thus far. So again, I'm not going to hold my breath on these investments, but I do want to see this manufacturing sector begin to come back to the United States. We need to see this, folks. This is how you build a middle class. This is how you build an economy. This is how you grow your GDP. And we're not seeing that. We're still very much relying on imports coming in the country that now have a 15% tariff slapped on them. So you have a nice little 15% tax on everything you buy that comes in from abroad. Let's look at healthcare employment, which declined by 28,000 jobs in February, following an increase of 77,000 jobs for the sector in January. Again, we're seeing these things slowly drop off. Ladies and gentlemen, information sector lost 11,000 jobs in February, continuing the downward trend after averaging a loss of 5,000 jobs in the last 12 months. Construction jobs in that sector lost 11,000 jobs in February, again, after posting a gain of 48,000 jobs in January. Transportation and warehousing employment declined by 11,300 jobs. Yep, we're seeing these hits, folks. It's not going in the direction we would expect it to go. Not by a long shot. Now, what does this mean for the month of February? What does this tell us? What does it mean for the workforce? Now, we're seeing the number of long-term unemployed, as defined by those who have been jobless for 27 weeks or more, was little changed at 1.9 million in February, but it is up from the 1.5 million from just a year ago. So therefore, we've got a lot more people that are looking for jobs that can't seem to find them. Why is it happening? Because we're not growing. We're not expanding the economy. We're not making it easier for people to create their own businesses and what have you. And we're not bringing those investment dollars into the country right now, where we can build more manufacturing, which would employ lots of people. And by the way, good paying jobs on top of that. We're also seeing, as I spoke to you yesterday on the show, that we're trying to bring in now 85,000 new H-1B visas into the country to take good paying white collar jobs. Why would we do that when we have upwards of, the 1.9 million number in February? Why would we do this? It doesn't make any sense. And by the way, we're also seeing the number of people who were employed part-time for economic reasons decreased by 477,000 to 4.4 million in the month of February. Yep, folks, so I wish I had something better to report on this for you. I love when I see the economy expand and what have you, but we're not seeing that as of right now. Now, there's some reasons for this data. People are claiming that the winter storms may have something to do with things, for example, like construction. Okay, maybe things will uptick in the next month as we see winter come to an end. We were seeing nursing strikes. They may have dragged into the healthcare system, which may account for those losses. Okay, maybe we'll start to see a little bit of a rebound in the next month or two. But still, the pace of job gains over the last few months is still dramatically slower than it was in 2024 under Biden and much of 2025 under President Trump, where we lost 1.1 million jobs. So this is going to make it much harder for the Fed to sell the labor market stabilization and, again, to justify further rate cuts moving forward. That's the way we'll see this. Unless, of course, Trump gets a yes man in there for him and does whatever he wants. Maybe we'll see cuts in May when Jerome Powell leaves his position. We'll see. Now, there is something a little bit positive today, though, in the market. I found this one for us in Forbes. And it says that Costco says it will turn possible tariff refunds into lower prices and better values for all their customers. Well, fantastic. We need this. I mean, we needed this like last year. But this is what we're seeing right now. And again, we don't even know if these tariff refunds will actually happen. But you're seeing companies like Costco, for example, alongside other companies like Walmart, FedEx, Staples. They're suing the federal government to receive the refunds for the duties that they had already paid, which were deemed illegal by a Supreme Court ruling just not too long ago. Now, will they get the money back? That's going to be a very long process, I would imagine. I cannot see that this would just be an overnight thing, of course. This would probably go to litigation for quite some time to see how much money they actually would have to pay back to these companies. How would they do that? I really don't know. But we know that the Supreme Court determined that the Liberation Day tariffs were unlawful. So now will these companies get the money back? And what does that mean for the people that paid these prices at the stores? Do I get money back because I paid 15%, 20%, 30% more on goods that came in abroad into places like Costco? No, of course not. Of course not. So the companies made out with this, right? They got to sell their prices, their goods for higher in the stores. You paid more for it. They collected the money. And now they're going to get money back. So who's the real loser here? It's you, the person that goes to buy these goods. So no shock here. We know that President Trump is going to slap on the global tariff now using another piece of legislation that he probably has no right to even use again. Anything based on what I could see, for example. He used the IEPA form last year. That didn't work at all, didn't match anything for that legislation for him to use it, yet he was able to get away with it for quite some time. So we talk about we're going to get these refunds possibly in some of these retail stores. Maybe you get some prices lower. That could be a good thing. But now we're fighting inflation coming in from, for example, this Israel-Iran war. That's going to affect the global market because now it's going to cost more money to ship your goods to these stores now, on top of the 15% tariff on everything coming into this country. So if Costco is still getting things, say, from China, for example, you still got a 15% tariff on them currently, whether they get that money back or not. You're going to be paying for that. And if it costs more money to fuel the trucks, to ship goods from A to B, that's going to cause the prices in the store to go up as a result as well. So, nothing positive on that front, I would say, folks. But we'll see. Maybe they can get some lower prices at Costco. Maybe that'll be a good thing for you in 2026. Hey, low prices are good no matter what. No matter what. By the way, where prices are not going down, I can tell you this much, folks. This is out of the New York Post. Oh, no, I'm sorry, California Post. I sometimes confuse them now because they're almost like one and the same now. The California Post now is showing that California gas crisis now risks sending prices well above $8 a gallon now and forcing drivers to ration fuel. Isn't that nice? You don't even need to bottleneck fuel anymore, folks. You can just cause the price of gas to rise significantly, and that way you choose not to go out on your own doing. That's wonderful. Now, Gavin Newsom's green agenda, which has a very big part in all this, not just the turmoil we're seeing in the Middle East, but this is going to be sending gas prices skyrocketing in California, $8 a gallon. I don't even think we saw this at the height of the Biden administration. I mean, it got up there. It got $6, $7 in some places. I never saw it get to $8, though. And obviously, potentially returning drivers to the desperate fuel rationing not seen since the 1970s under the great Jimmy Carter. This is the result of bad government policy coming out of Sacramento, folks. You have lots of refineries packing up and leaving the state of California right now. They don't want to do business there anymore. It's too costly. It's difficult to get drilling permits in California, even though Gavin Newsom did open up some last year. But people don't want to do business in a climate where they're not business friendly. And especially when you have this issuance of a possible wealth tax on the people that own these companies. So they're saying, hey, I don't need this. I can go someplace else where there's no state income tax, no wealth tax, where they're much more friendly to drill and do business with us. And when California ranks last in doing business every single year, I think Forbes does a survey every year. Every single year, California is the worst state, number one, to do business with. And that's been that way for decades now. So no surprise there that we're seeing, number one, refineries close and, again, take these good-paying jobs with them to wherever they're going. Now, with drivers in the Golden State already facing these really high gas prices, Southern California State Senator Suzette Vahadris, I believe that's how you say her name, has urged the governor to scrap the California's cap and investment program that charges oil makers for carbon emissions, right? So this is the Green New Deal in California, right? Slap on these environmental issue deals and taxes and red tape and fees, and now you got higher gas prices. And it's amazing to me. You go to some place like the eastern border of California, that borders Arizona, and you go to a city like Needles, and the gas is $5.80 per gallon for unleaded, regular unleaded. Then you go over the border to a small city over there, and it's $2.80 a gallon for the same gasoline. This is all policy-based coming out of California, folks. Let's understand this. Now, she dubbed this as Newsom's program for the cap and tax scheme and warned that closing any further oil refineries in the state could trigger an economic collapse. Well, no kidding. And on top of the whole wealth tax, where you're getting roughly about $1 trillion of state GDP to leave, should these people pack up and leave like Mark Zuckerberg and others, that's going to be very, very devastating for the state of California, folks. By the way, this is not scaremongering at all. This is the reality of the situation. When you have a tyrannical government inside your state capital that is crushing free enterprise, as Gavin Newsom does, and all the Democrats in Sacramento with their supermajority, you're going to see lots and lots of problems like this, and they get worse and worse over time. People don't want to do business there. So what happens as a result when Chevron or Phillips 66 or whomever, Valero, leaves California. Well, how do they get the gas into California? Well, you got to get it from someplace else now. Now you got to ship the gas even further into the state, which again brings up the price very, very significantly. You're looking at $1 more per gas just based on the cap and investment that Gavin Newsom pushes out. And you're one refinery away from losing about another 10% of California's overall oil supply. When you have less supply, what happens, folks? Easy economics 101. Same demand, less supply, the prices go up. That's why we're seeing prices skyrocketing right now, because of what's taking place in the Middle East. When you take out 20 to 25% of all the global oil trade, prices are going to go up. That's just natural. And now we're looking at California, for example, again, based on what takes place in Sacramento alone, well above $8 a gallon when you go to the gas station. It doesn't have to happen. By the way, early 1980s, California had, I think, 33 or 38 different oil refineries. Now they're looking at, I think, under 10 now, because so many have closed rapidly in the last couple of years, thanks to Gavin Newsom's reign of terror. It's disgusting. And these people don't care about this. These people don't care at all. But the prices are slowly starting to etch their way up. And even when the national average was, for example, last year was around $3 a gallon, the average Californian was paying $4.81 at the pump for the same gasoline. You have things like the gas tax that Gavin Newsom just rises whenever he wants. Well, not whenever he wants, but they do it annually, usually. But they never lower it. And by the way, the roads never get fixed as a result of this. I mean, California should have the best roads in the country. Where's all this money going that they're taxing you on? Nobody seems to know. Nobody seems to care. There's no oversight. But you are paying more and getting nothing in return from it. Just more of an empty wallet. So I can only pray for my friends in California right now. It doesn't seem like things are moving accordingly, though, in the right direction. You know what? There might be some positivity. We're seeing someone like a Chad Bianco, the Riverside County Sheriff. He's in first place in this race. The only problem is Eric Swalwell's in second place. And God knows if Eric Swalwell gets in, if he'll make things even worse, which I would imagine because he makes pretty much everything worse with his policy making. Nothing good is going to come from that. You need to get new leadership inside Sacramento. You need to get some more policies that actually make things more conducive for producers, not drive them out of the state. You need to start bringing that investment back into the state, and very, very quickly. All right, folks, let's move on to some market reports before we go into some very important articles today. We got to talk about what's taking place in Iran, what's taking place with Kristi Noem, for example, losing her position at the DHS, and a lot of other things right now as well. Let's take a look at the markets right now. Let's not waste any time. Let's jump right into it. All right, so let's look at where top marginal stocks today, folks. We've got the S&P 500 right now trading at $6,759.02 a share right now, down some 1.06% from yesterday's close. It's coming out of CNBC. We got the NASDAQ trading at $22,529.37 a share right now. And then, of course, we got the Dow Jones falling some 500 points after Trump's comments on the spiking of oil. Yep, trading at $47,394.61, down some 560 points from yesterday's close, down 1.17%. Now, why is this happening? Oh, many of us know why, of course. We, for example, look at things like out of the Economic Times. The markets have been under pressure all this week as the Iran-Israel war escalates. And by the way, they're calling it a conflict. This is a war. And we're very much involved in this. We're very much invested in it too, by the way. Spending some $275 million every single day at least in this conflict thus far. And what is happening as a result of that? We're pushing oil prices up sharply, which in turn fuels inflation concerns. That's why we're seeing, for example, the bond market starting to fall apart. We're seeing, obviously, lots of people, lots of investors selling what they have and investing in things like oil and energy right now because the prices are going up substantially. We can also look over at the European and Asian markets right now that have been selling off first, with U.S. traders buying up the dips intermediately. All these things are a result of what's taking place right now. All these things are very much intertwined with what's taking place in the Middle East. 100%. We also have investors, by the way, who are bracing for U.S. non-farm payrolls. We have retail sales. We have inflation data. All these things are causing people to sell while they can. And that's why you're seeing some of these stocks beginning to drop off. And of course, which could influence the Federal Reserve's rate cut expectations, which probably will not happen should inflation begin to rise, which already is at 3%. It'll probably continue to rise much further if this war goes on, depending how long it goes on for, too. Remember, we were sold by Donald Rumsfeld that this war in Iraq would be what? A couple weeks, maybe? How long were we there for? A couple of years? I think it was actually 8 years, if I'm not mistaken. But, they tell you one thing, they do another. When things get bad, people are going to sell and look for what is going to make them some more money. That's what the top investors are going to do. And that's why you're seeing our top marginal stocks this week dropping a little bit, 1%. That's a big drop, but again, it makes sense. All these things make sense based on what we're seeing out of that region. Let's move into our tech and crypto stocks right now. We got NVIDIA trading at $182.06 a share right now, down some 0.70% from yesterday's close. We got Meta trading at $647.97 a share right now, down 1.91%. Apple trading at $256.77 a share, down 1.35%. These markets are taking a hit, folks. Amazon trading at $216.19 a share, down 1.26% from yesterday's close. Alphabet trading at $299.26 a share, down 0.55%. Microsoft, one of the only few winners today, is trading at $412.18 a share, up 0.36%. We have Dell Technologies trading at $147.33 a share, up 1.23%. And Broadcom doing very well today. We got it trading at $342.52 a share, up some 2.93%, almost 10 points from yesterday's close. And then we look at Bitcoin, trading at $68,452.15 a share. Taking a big hit, we're down 4.15%, almost 3,000 points from yesterday's close. So what we're seeing right now in these top tech stocks, the crypto stocks, the Magnificent Seven, what we're seeing right now is the AI infrastructure has outperformed the AI software. And companies, when we look at Broadcom, we look at Dell, we're showing some strength in these performance, mainly in the hardware and the networking and the server industry sectors as well. That's why you're seeing some boost in those. We're seeing things like NVIDIA, for example, semiconductors and what have you, slightly down, dipping down, but held up better than most other mega caps right now in today's market. Then we look at Apple, Amazon, Meta. Again, seeing some small pullbacks, again, due to some cooling inside the Magnificent Seven this week. And then, of course, we look at Bitcoin. A real significant drop, again, tied to liquidity rotations and exchange-traded fund outflows. That's why we're seeing a lot of this. So, nothing shocking there. Markets are shifting. Markets are adapting. I told you before, the AI boom is coming, folks. It's coming soon. And when that bursts, that you're going to see a lot of things drop out as a result of that. But right now, the government's propping up AI, so therefore, it seems like a safe investment. Let's shift over to gold right now. Let's look at our precious metals right now. This is a very important thing to take a look at, of course. How's the gold doing? And gold's been up significantly this year, the end of last year. And right now it's trading at $5,159.20 a share right now per ounce, up some 1.59% from yesterday's close, just over 80 points from yesterday. Yep. Gold's edging up after the U.S. payrolls report. Yep. Silver trading at $84.40 a share, up some 2.7% from yesterday's close. Then we look over at platinum, trading at $2,146.70 a share, up 0.82%. And finally, palladium trading at $1,669 a share right now, up 1.1% from yesterday's close. So what's taking place now? We saw, by the way, earlier today, about 2 hours ago when I was first looking at these reports, gold was dropping a little bit. There was a little bit of a dip, but it seems to have rebounded as the afternoon kicked in. And again, this reflects the short-term profit taking after these recent highs. Earlier this week, it was at $5,300 an ounce. So it's not really a structural reversal, but what we're seeing is it goes through some little highs and little lows throughout the week, but generally gold is winning from where it was a year ago. It is up substantially. And as I told you before, the prediction now, that's what the trends forecasters are telling us, we're looking at gold to be $6,000 by the end of 2026. So I'm not giving any financial advice, but what I am telling you is that gold, being the safe haven asset that it is, it's going to likely continue to rise. Same with silver. You're going to start to see that. And by the way, you've got the risk off, the risk on rotation as traders, they're temporarily shifting from capital towards energy and defensive commodities. Again, we're getting ready to be in an all-out war. And it's going to probably sustain for a while. What did I tell you happened yesterday? I told you President Trump was meeting with all the major defense contractors and their executives at the White House to see how quickly they can replenish our stockpiles, because right now we're limited on supplies for that. So what does that mean? More investment involved in that. So that's a safe bet to make right now, especially if you're in war. Never forget, folks, I told you before, people get rich off of war. And this is exactly what you're seeing right now. It's a safe haven. It's a safe haven for them because they know the money's going to be flowing in because Congress is going to allow it to happen. That's why we're seeing those things. So we see these shifts from, again, the safe haven of the precious metals going towards the energy and the defensive commodities, again, tied to the supply stocks that we're seeing. So not a shock there at all. Again, you got to put your money where you think it's going to grow. And right now, these two are growing exponentially. Then we look over at the industrial metals, for example, like platinum, palladium. They're falling more sharply because a lot of these are also tied to the manufacturing demand of it, which again is being repriced amid the geopolitical uncertainty. So there's a reason why we're seeing some ups, some downs today. Like I said, palladium and platinum are just barely up today, barely, but not too much. But earlier today, they were both down. So we're seeing these shifts. I'm sure they will rebound, as they always do, because precious metals never lose their value, especially in times of war, or even when you see, for example, the dollar is making a little bit of a rebound. It's getting a little bit stronger. So you see the price of gold shift as a result of that. All right, let's move into the most important part of today, talking about our oil stocks to close off the weekly economic report. Let's look at Brent crude first and foremost. And actually, let me just check to make sure oil didn't just skyrocket since I've been sitting here. Okay, so right now it looks like oil is, for Brent crude, let me see. Oh, Brent crude went up. Geez, okay, wow. All right, it did change. So Brent crude is now trading at $93.20 a barrel, up 9.12% from yesterday's close. Not a shock there. WTI crude out of West Texas is trading at $91.42 a barrel, up some 12.6% from yesterday's close. Wow. Big trading going off there, folks. I mean, earlier, when I first did this around noon, Brent crude was trading at $92.32, and WTI was trading at 90 cents a barrel. Wow. So we're seeing these jump up pretty quickly, folks. Not a shock. I told you before, this is going to get much worse. And when it starts hitting 100, 120, 150, $200 a barrel, you're going to see those gas prices begin to double at the pumps. So get ready for it. I'd say fill up your car now if you can, because this is going to get much more out of hand. And by the way, we're only in week one of this, with no end in sight. As long as this war goes on, you will see that Strait of Hormuz shut down. All the gas, all the oil will not come out of that region. And the markets will reflect as a result of that. All right, let's see, though. So we got the oil surging aggressively again because of this conflict. Make no mistake about it. We're seeing the disruption of tanker traffic coming out of the Strait of Hormuz. Nothing is going through right now. Again, despite President Trump's plea to a lot of these oil tankers that they would guide them and insure them through this, nothing's going through this area. And by the way, this puts our ships too at risk as well. Again, you have a choke point of 20% of the global oil flows coming now. This is why you're seeing these things. And as a result, WTI crude is up. Brent crude is up. They're up 9 to almost 13% just in an intraday trade. It's crazy. It really is. Then we look over to things like Murbain crude, which is out of the UAE. Again, all that's been shut down. All that's been shut down. They're trading today at $99.60, or the other estimate is $100.50 per barrel right now. Again, reflecting Asia's vulnerability to the supply chain constraints. So that's an issue. All that's getting choked off, and as a result, you're not seeing any supply coming out of that region. But when we look at Urals crude coming out of Russia, it's rising moderately, but because Russian barrels are less directly affected by the strait being shut down, you're seeing that the prices aren't skyrocketing like you once did, but they are going up. Last week, I think on the show, it was trading at about $58 a barrel. Today, it's up at $70.31 a barrel, up 2.15% from yesterday, whereas Murbain was up 6 to 7% from yesterday's close. So we're seeing big numbers with this, and as these go up, so do your gas prices, folks. So, I told you, this is going to happen. If we get in this war, it's going to crush the economy. It's going to have a devastating effect on the Asian and European economies as well. Anything we get from these continents as far as trade will cost so much more to bring to the United States, which means those prices go up automatically, on top of the 15% tariff on every single thing coming into this country. So expect higher prices at the grocery stores. Anything you're buying from abroad is going to cost much, much more. And by the way, let me just say this before we go on. I saw this in Reuters yesterday evening. President Trump was questioned on the price of gas going up during the Iran war. And this is what he had to say. He said, "I don't have any concern about it. They'll drop very rapidly when this is over. And if they rise, they rise. But this is far more important than having gasoline prices go up for a little bit." Okay. So I guess, the middle class can go to hell. Working class can go to hell. If your gas prices go up, hey, this is a good cause, right? We don't know what the cause is, but we know that it's very important to us. Wonderful. By the way, 81% of Israel now supports this Iran war, and only 27% of Americans are supporting this. So what is the more noble cause? Why is this so important if the American people are not buying this? Trump says he needs to be involved in the selection of the new supreme leader of Iran, too, by the way. I'd love to see how that's going to work out. Too. So, again, I told you, folks, there is no strategy in this war. There is nothing that would indicate that there's any good reason for us to be in this war, other than Prime Minister Netanyahu wants us in this war. But what does this do for the United States? Does this make us safer? Does it have anything to do with national security or our sovereignty at risk? It doesn't. It really doesn't. But I want to go over I'm not going to harp too much on the Iran war day. You know how I feel about this war. I don't think there's any good reason for us to be in this conflict. I would hope that we would end this sooner rather than later, but it looks like we're all in on this. And the war propaganda has never been greater to keep us in it. So, I got an article out of Breitbart, and what they're proposing to the American people now, today, on day 7 of this conflict, is that the military operation against Iran has entered its 7th day. I'm sorry, is today day 8? Okay, today's day 8. No, it can't be. Today's day 7. And the United States says that it has continued to dominate the Iranian Navy with over 30 warships destroyed. And Tehran continues to launch strikes against Israel, albeit at a much more reduced pace. So people are looking at that going, oh, well, good. We have a reduced pace. That means they're low on supply. Everything's crumbling down for them. We've defeated their navy. Folks, we're not fighting on the seas, though. So they can sink ships in the harbor that are docked and put them to the bottom of the Persian Gulf. What does it have to do with the war as a whole? What does it have to do with the fact that we have, for example, control of their airspace? On yesterday's show, I told you, we control the airspace over Serbia in 1999. We control the airspace over Iraq. We control the airspace over Afghanistan. We control the airspace over Yemen. Israel right now currently controls the airspace over Gaza. Have they defeated Hamas yet? No, they haven't. Did we defeat the Houthi rebels inside Yemen? We did not. And how's Iraq looking today? How's Afghanistan looking today? Oh, right, it's back in the hands of the Taliban. One of the biggest sponsors of terrorism globally, by the way. So, we can look at what they're saying, but is anything adding up to progress in this war? What does success look like? That's what I want to ask the listeners. What does success look like? Is it picking a new supreme leader? Is that it? And how are you going to get involved in this if the Iranian people do not want us involved in this? Why are they selling us on this propaganda? This is what the Times of Israel wrote. It says the number of Iranian missile strikes is down 90% and drone strikes are down 83% since last Saturday. Okay. Now they say the threat has not yet been removed. Indeed, more missiles were launched towards Israeli cities on Friday morning, sending locals to their shelters. No injuries have been reported in the morning strikes. So, you hear this and you say, good, look at, they're already low on their stockpile. Everything's coming to a close. Once Iran's done firing everything off, this will end. Gas prices will go down. We claim victory. Everyone's happy. And we get a new supreme leader. Or, I don't know, a new leader, a new president. I don't even know what we would put in there. I don't think the Iranian people would accept Pahlavi, although that's our main pick. But let me explain something to everybody. Not too long ago, last June, when we again attacked Iran unprovoked, we saw similar strategic strikes during the 12-day war, did we not? But what the Iranians did, was they used older, outdated technology first in these strikes, these targeted strikes. This way, they use a barrage of missiles coming in, for example, into Israel. That's what we saw when they would show us what took place. And yes, some would get through. Lots would be intercepted by the Iron Dome, for example, the THAAD defense missiles and what have you. But here's the problem. When you send a barrage of missiles in, and the Iron Dome has to shoot up roughly, I think it's 3 missiles for every one incoming missile, you're wasting your stockpile very, very quickly. They don't intend these missiles really to hit. Some do, of course. Some get through. But they don't intend on these missiles to hit. That's the problem. These are their old stockpiles that they're just throwing out at the Israelis, at the U.S. bases in the region. So we got to be aware of this. But what the problem is, we're depleting our stockpiles much more quickly than they are. And you know how I know this? Well, because, again, I do my research, of course. Earlier this week, I saw a quote from an Iranian general named Sardar Jabari. And he said that Trump should know that today we fired the old stockpile missiles. Soon we will unveil weapons that you have never seen before. New hypersonic missiles, anybody? New cluster bombs that they're shooting that we cannot defend against? We're just starting to see those cluster bombs coming into effect right now. And we don't even know what other technology they've been working on or what they've been saving up. So, is it any wonder that Israel will not let CNN reporters show the exact damage about what's going on inside Israel? It looks horrible inside cities like Tel Aviv. Absolutely horrible. But what is the information coming out of the region? That, hey, look at their stockpiles are down. Hey, we sunk their ships. Hey, we sunk a Iranian warship off the coast of Sri Lanka. I mean, that's fine, but what does that have to do with the war? What progress does it make? So what if the Kurdish rebels are coming in to fight the Iranian military? What good is that going to do? You're going to go up against a military of about 1 million strong? With people we've just armed at the last bit? I mean, this is all unplanned, folks. This is not going according to the strategy, so now we're just grasping for different things. Can we get the Kurds involved? Can we get, their navy defeated? these stupid things we're saying right now. But none of it equates to any sort of goal. Because we didn't take down the government last Saturday. We never did. And we probably never will. And if you can't take down the government, how are you going to claim victory on this? The victory would have been the Ayatollah dying, which did occur. The people of Iran rising up, taking over the government buildings, throwing out their leaders, and then we come in and claim victory and clean up the mess afterwards. That's why they were saying to the Iranian people, rise up against your government, but it didn't happen. And that was the big misstep in all of this. Because there is support for this government. Whether you like the Iranian government or not is inconsequential. These people support their government, and they support them now more than ever, especially after the attacks last June. Especially after the 165 young girls, 6 to 12, that were killed last Saturday morning. Especially after being told you're in talks in good faith, and then, of course, the United States sneaks up and does this attack along with Israel, which, again, had to be planned well in advance. So, again, of course, you don't want to see the immense damage going on all over Israel. They don't want you to see this. So, in America, we're not seeing these sorts of things. We had the CNN reporters that were there, I think it was either yesterday or the day before. Oh, we have some incoming missiles. Well, we can't show them to you because the Israeli government doesn't want us to show it to you. Well, that makes good for reporting, doesn't it? I mean, it's unbelievable when we hear these things. But I wouldn't take too much, of this article. I think it's obviously a feel-good article. But Iran is bullish right now. They're very bullish. They're ready to go. They believe in themselves, and they understand that this is it for them, by the way. If they fall to the United States or Israel right now, and there is a huge government regime, and they get a puppet installed, they know that it's it for them. That's completely it for them. So they're going to fight to the last man, I would have to say. And that's why they're not giving us any type of ceasefire deal, which again was offered to them last Saturday by the United States. They outright refused. That tells me they're at least somewhat competent and somewhat confident in their ability to win this war. This was Foreign Minister Arachi talking about just that. Take a listen.
We are not asking for a ceasefire. And we don't see any reason why we should negotiate with the U.S. When we negotiated with them twice, and every time they attacked us at the middle of negotiations. So there is no request for a ceasefire by us, and there is no request for the negotiation with the U.S. From us. We have never sent any messages to them.
Okay, so he makes it very, very clear to American press that, no, we're not going to do a ceasefire. We told you that if you attack us, it's on. The war's on. We will destroy every single U.S. military base, every U.S. air base, every single oil refinery in the region, every single oil field. We will hit Israel in the same exact way. And by the way, I'm told, I can't confirm this to you just yet, but I'm told Iran is trying to make Israel look like Gaza, which is a complete disaster. So this isn't good for the Israeli people. It's not good for really anybody. And that's why I told you before, this did not have to happen. We could have had a deal last June. That was very reasonable. The Iranians were going to give us everything we wanted. It would have assured safety around the world over this looming threat of nuclear technology and nuclear weapons coming out of Iran. But instead, we let Israel invade, and of course, we attacked them as well, unprovoked yet again, amid these talks. Same exact strategy. Same exact perfidy, again, which is illegal under the Geneva Convention. Talking in good faith, saying, yes, let's meet. Let's plan a day on Sunday to finalize this. You have the Iranian negotiator, what was his name? Ali Shamkhani, if I'm not mistaken, ready to give us everything we wanted. And what do? We didn't kill him, but Israel kills this man along with nuclear scientists, other people in the IRGC, right before we come to this meeting. And then we say, hey, we approve of this, of course. Well, yeah, of course we did, because we greenlit this. We wanted this to happen. And it shouldn't be a shock to anybody that this took place, because the same exact thing happened again. We had a meeting scheduled for this past Monday. We left the Thursday meeting last week suggesting that things were moving forward. Everyone seemed to be pleased with the way things were going. And then 2 days later, of course, we have Israel and the United States bombing in Tehran. Subterfuge to the max, I would have to say, folks. And nothing positive is coming from this. Nothing at all positive is coming from this. And now we just seem to be trying to do whatever we can to at least save face on this. Talking about how they're lunatics, all this other nonsense. Where's the diplomacy? And why are we just striking other countries like this and trying to take we assassinated the supreme leader amid talks. I mean, it's remarkable that we can honestly say that we're searching for peace, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I have to call it as I see it. We were not looking for peace. We were not looking forward to the next round of talks. Marco Rubio was not going to go to Israel to discuss the Iran deal. None of this, none in the nuclear talks. None of this was taking place. So how can we honestly sit there and say, hey, listen, we tried to work with them, but we just had to bomb them because this is all in the absence of any type of intel that they even have a nuclear weapon. Let's be honest about it. Again, I'd love to see the intel that they have any type of nuclear program or nuclear weapon in development right now, because they don't. They don't. So then the question begs, why do we attack? Well, we know from Peter Doocy the other night on Jesse Waters, he told us. He said Netanyahu contacted President Trump and told him, hey, the Supreme Leader's meeting with his top military brass on Saturday morning. That'd be a great time to hit him. Now's our chance. Then you have Netanyahu and other Israeli leaders coming out, hey, we've been waiting 40 years for this. This is a long time in the making for the Israelis. They wanted this. They've been wanting to take Iran down for quite some time. And they finally got their opportunity, and now the backlash is just overwhelming them. And as a result of the innocent Israeli people are struggling as a result of this. The innocent Iranian people, by the way, who President Trump and those in the United States claim to love so much, were bombing and killing some of them. And I don't really have anything more to say about this, folks. I'm very, very upset about this. Let's move on to another article I've got for you I think this is in Reuters, if I'm not mistaken. Kristi Noem was fired yesterday as Homeland Security after the storms of shootings that took place in places like Minneapolis and, of course, discussions about spending. So it seems Kristi Noem is out after the months-long controversies and questions over a $220 million advertising contract. And it appears that there was some issue with her and, I guess, a counterpart in the government, Corey Lewandowski, about having an affair. I can't speak on that. That's what I've heard. I can't claim to that. But that's what's being reported as well. So I don't think President Trump enjoyed her conduct as of late. But the president now will go into Oklahoma Senator Mark Wayne Mullen to replace Kristi Noem in her position as head of DHS. And I don't know what the future of Kristi Noem would be. She's no longer the governor of South Dakota. But I think President Trump, in this position, he wants to get someone in there different, a different person to come out and lead the way to get away from the negative press that we have with the DHS. I think that's the main reason with all this. I don't think it's necessarily her position. I think that's why they also removed Bovino as well. They just want to get different people and different faces in to say, look, we're making changes. Everything's going to be working out just fine. And again, Mark Wayne Mullen, he's already in Congress. He's already well-liked by many of his colleagues and by President Trump. But this is what he had to say when he was questioned about taking this appointment just yesterday.
I was excited. I mean, when you
saw his name called.
Well, it came from the White House, so it came from the switchboard. But I was excited. The president, first of all, the president, I have a really good relationship. We talk all the time, anyways. I've got to be honest with you, I wasn't expecting the call today, but super excited. And I'm more excited about just ready to get started. There's a lot of work we can do to get Department of Homeland Security working, working for the American people. The Department of Homeland Security has a very broad jurisdiction. And I think there's a lot of work that we need to do, and I'm excited about it.
Senator Fetterman says he's going to vote for you. Do you expect other Democrats to vote for you?
John already texted me, and of course, you guys know John and I are friends too, and so I don't know. We're going to try to earn everybody's vote. I want people to understand, when I go into this position, yes, I'm a Republican, yes, I'm conservative, but Department of Homeland Security is to keep everybody, regardless if you support me, if you don't support me, regardless of what your thoughts are. I'm here to enforce the policies that Congress passed, and right now I'm part of it, but once I make that transition, my focus is to keep the homeland secure. That's going to be my focus, and we're super excited about this opportunity.
So, again, solid stance. Again, he wants to follow the same policies by federal immigration law as we ought to be doing. Everyone in Congress should be approving of that. But I think Trump wanted to get away from Noem and obviously the possibility that she would be impeached should Democrats win back the House, which does seem likely at this point, unfortunately. And we had Republicans even calling her for to lose her job after the shootings in Minnesota. So I think President Trump was thinking ahead here and said, listen, let's let her get out from under this. Let's take her out. We'll put in someone else like Mark Wayne Mullen in there in that position. And we'll move forward with the same exact policy, really. But what I think he needs to do, and I think what Mark Wayne Mullen needs to do upon taking this position, should he get in, which he does look like he will get the votes, it does seem that way. He needs to make it clear that, yes, ICE is going to be following due process, following the rule of law, but we need to get people in these local communities to, again, aid and assist as far as handing over these illegal aliens that are arrested. That would solve so much of these problems. You wouldn't see ICE just going from house to house to house. But we need to follow due process. And I think if we can assure the American people that at least due process is being followed, I think you would see a lot of this hostility between Democrats and the supporters of open borders at least start to mull just a little bit. I think that would happen a little bit better. Because, again, no one wants to see people in masks going into houses. Again, I understand the reason for the masks. They don't want to get doxxed. I completely understand that. They don't want their faces put on the internet and people attacking them or their family members at home. I completely understand that. So there needs to be some concessions on both sides, though. One, we need to follow the Constitution on the Republican side to carry out this task that should be carried out, no doubt about it. But on the left side, we shouldn't be haranguing, harassing, getting in law enforcement's faces when they're making lawful arrests according to the Constitution. It's a two-way street, folks. You just can't go one way and not the other way. So I think moving forward, that should be fine. We'll see how Mark Wayne Mullen does with this job. I think he'll do fine with it. All right. Let's see. We got a few minutes remaining, folks. We got one more article we can go over quickly today before we hit the weekend. This is out of Just the News. Says that the Oversight Committee chairman suggests criminal referrals are possible in the Minnesota fraud probe that took place. Well, when have we ever seen, by the way, though, after any one of these hearings, anyone's referred by the Oversight Committee and then actually gets a referral? I'd love to see it, though. But right now we got James Comer. He leads the Oversight Committee. And he told Just the News that further criminal referrals are possible with the evidence his committee has uncovered with the rampant welfare fraud inside Minnesota. So who are we looking at here? We're looking at Tim Walz. We're looking at Attorney General Keith Ellison, who for years were aware of claims of this widespread fraud that took place in many of these different factions in the local governments by the state's federally funded welfare programs. Right? We saw him during the debate talking about how we need to get these programs, more money, more money. And what we found out was that we had, $9 billion worth of fraud taking place inside Minnesota alone. So they failed to act. And it took whistleblowers' jobs to come through and use their information to come forward and to really blow the light on this and to really see what's going on here. Now, we've seen Walz, again, he acts like a babe in the woods. He doesn't act like he doesn't know what he's doing. But incompetence for this, to allow this to happen, for Keith Ellison to take money from a lot of these groups that, of course, he turns the blind eye to, is no good. is no good at all. This is exactly what we're talking about right now. Now, Waltz appeared on the Oversight Committee hearing on Wednesday alongside Ellison, where he again defended his handling of the fraud allegations, touting that the federal prosecution had more than 75 defendants. But he struggled to answer why his own government did not take action against the suspected fraudsters after his office was informed of this suspicious activity. He didn't have an answer for it because he turned a blind eye to it. That's what it all comes down to. So, what's going to happen to Tim Waltz? Is anything going to happen to him? Probably not. Should something happen? Of course. Because you have somebody in a position that is allowing fraud to take place and, of course, allowing the Minnesota taxpayer to be ripped off by these people that are not providing these said services to them. Again, the Oversight Committee believes that this evidence shows the opposite, that Waltz and his senior officials knew about the fraud concerns from the very beginning of his tenure and ultimately failed to act as a result of this. So we shouldn't be shocked about this. But what does Waltz do? Waltz says, well, we got 75 people now that are have been arrested. Well, I'm sorry. Why did it take so long? Why was this even happening? Where's the oversight in your own state to bring this to people's attention and, of course, to stop this? Because he did absolutely nothing. Why is Keith Ellison taking money from these groups, too, by the way? Again, nothing done on the state level. It was all found much further afterwards. Folks, thank you again for being here today. I appreciate you so much. Hope you all learned something and hope you'll share the show with others. Make sure you have a great weekend, a great rest of your day. I'll see you back here Monday for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good, stay busy, and God bless.